Everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're excuse me. Today we're going to be looking at the 924B support tier list. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. Helps out a ton on the channel. I will have timestamps in the description so you can jump around your favorite parts if you'd like. And if you want to follow along in this Google Doc as well that I'm going to be referencing on the left, you can also find a link to that in the description. And then within here, you can click on each one of these individual sort of mini Google Docs, and it'll give you a 1 to 5 rating system for each champion, recommended runes, recommended items. And then if I do have a guide for the champion, I'll put it in there. Some of the guides are pretty old at this point. I need to go through and update them once the new year starts. But it'll still give you a pretty, unless the champion has been severely reworked, it'll still give you a pretty decent idea on how to play the champs. And the 1 to 5 system, 1 is the champion is one of the worst at that particular task. 4 is support, 5 is the champion is one of the best. So lane pressure is how likely can the champion get priority in the laning phase. Kill threat is how likely can the champion cause a kill, particularly early on in the game. Safety is how safe is the champion, especially from early game ganks. Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time. And then reliability is how likely is it that someone can perform at a high level on this champ over time. So part of that is how difficult are the mechanics and the decisions, but part of it also is, you know, how well do they fit into the meta right now? Are there a lot of counters to them out there, and so forth. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Now, I'm not going to reiterate all of these, but I still get asked about this a lot on stream by people that just haven't been through in a while in the preseason, and they're wondering, well, you know, why are Janna and Soraka like the 2 highest mainstream support champions? Why have Leona and Nautilus fallen off a little bit? They're coming up a little bit more, but what's going on with the meta? Now, some of this might change on 10.1, so be sure to check that out, because I think they're doing some changes to the gold items, which will shake up the meta a little bit. But some of the main things to keep in mind are there are no more procs on items, so this particularly hurts Leona and Nautilus because they have no other way to sustain in the laning phase, so they can get poked out now. And Zyra is hurt by the loss of mana regen on Frostfang because she usually doesn't get many mana items, and by many I mean any. So that really does hurt her mana regen early on. You kind of have to buy a Fairy Charm. I think a lot of times you have to rent it for 37 gold. You buy it for 125, sell it back for 88 in order to keep up a lot of harassment early on, which isn't a huge deal, but it can put her a little bit behind. There's no more CDR on tier 2 items, so this is difficult for support or for tanks because there aren't a lot of like really good tank items, especially ones that have CDR, and you're kind of priced into getting mobility boots as tanks a lot of times because you need to be able to roam around. However, a lot of enchanters can get Ionian boots for that extra 10% CDR to make up for it, and they're not really losing out on too much value. Like, you know, Soraka, for example, doesn't really need to be able to run between lanes over and over again really quickly. Right, like it's nice, but you can be all right with Ionian boots, more so than someone like a Blitzcrank, for example, or a Thresh. Relic Shield is actually really strong. I get asked about this all the time. Why do I take Relic Shield on pretty much everybody? The main thing is, right now, as the math works out, you get the exact same value of stats for Relic Shield and Frostfang. The main difference is Relic Shield is going to budget more of those stats towards flat HP, and Spell Thief is going to budget a little bit more towards AP. But it's really not that much of a difference early game. And I would argue that having the HP, the flat HP in the early game is more valuable than having AP in the early game, because you're not going to have enough modifiers. You're not going to have enough power for the AP to make more of a difference in the flat HP. But the big thing is that you're just going to get your wards a lot faster. It's just a much better version of Coin. It's pretty much guaranteed if you just hit melee minions and cannons, even if you're behind in the lane, that you're probably going to be able to get your wards by 10 minutes, and that's huge. And a lot of times you can upgrade to the tier 3 between 17 minutes and 20 minutes in a lot of games, even if you're behind. And that's really powerful because that gives you your 4th ward. It's going to give you a lot more HP. Down the line, it does give you more it does give you more mana, but if we go through and look here real quick, and then we can go to League Targon. Okay, so if we look at the tier 2 here, It's going to be 15 ability power and 70 health, right? Whereas if you look at this one, it's going to be... put in buckler here. Sorry, I didn't need to be that specific. Like you're getting 10 ability power here and 100 health. Here you're getting 15 ability power and 70 health. So the stats are already very close. Then the total gold value is 484. So you do get a little bit more out of Frostfang. You get like 40 more gold value out of that. But the thing is, you're going to be sitting on this for a long time. A lot of times. In the mid game, when you're just rotating between places, when you're trying to, you know, drop wards and all that stuff, you're going to be sitting on 3 charges for a long time. A lot of times, until a team fight breaks out, because it's not going to be safe for you to go up and harass as most champions. So, in the mid game, once the lanes break, you know, after, you know, maybe 13 minutes or so, the gold generation on this is going to fall off dramatically. And during the laning phase, if you get zoned out, if you get camped, if your ADC is just a turkey, if you're just having a bad game personally, if the enemy team's just playing really well, you can't get off harassment, they keep dodging all of your abilities, then you're almost always going to be later than Targon's in terms of your wards. And sometimes you can be really late. Like there have been some times where I've tried this out, and I don't get Frostfang until like 15 to 17 minutes. And by that time, you know, and like where the jungler just sits on your lane the entire game. And by that time, you know, Targon's would have almost been tier 3. So yeah, Frostfang, you could argue, okay, Frostfang's a little bit better for AP champions, right? But if you're thinking, well, what if you can turn that into a full-on bulwark with Relic by 17 minutes versus your Frostfang, you wouldn't get complete until 25 minutes. Well, now this is a much different proposition, right? Because this is worth 1,600 gold, whereas Frostfang was worth 500. So getting this transformed a lot faster is huge. It also gives you the 4th ward. So yes, with Frostfang in the early game, yes, you do get a little bit more AP if you build that on someone like Janna or Soraka or whatever, but it's not really enough, I don't think, to justify taking it over Relic, because this is guaranteed money. Like, you're not going to miss out on this. You just walk up and auto-attack minions, especially in the mid-game. This is just going to stack much, much faster in most cases. And that means you're going to get your 4th ward, and you're going to get this transform for that big money way faster than you would with Frostfang most of the time. So that's why I really think that most people should be taking Relic Shield. Now, they are changing this a little bit up next patch. I think we'll see on 10.1, but I think they're thinking about lowering the ability power on Bulwark, adding more HP, and they're going to add back in the the healing, I think, on hit. So they're kind of turning it back into what it was once before. And then Frostfang, they're going to be adding more AP to it, supposedly, and giving it the mana regen back. Now, when that comes back around, you know, we'll reassess, we'll look at it. But right now, I think that Relic Shield is just easy. Another thing about Relic that a lot of people forget, too, is it makes sure that your AD carry can't miss the cannon. Because we've all been there as a support. You sit there and you watch your AD carry miss 2 or 3 cannons during the laning phase, and you just know it just costs them like 250 gold, right? And they're not going to be able to get their BF sword on time now. It's just a bad feeling. So this not only gives you the gold, but it makes sure that your AD carry gets that gold off of the cannon, which is huge, especially if you're playing in an ELO bracket where AD carries are going to miss a lot of cannon minions. Which, I see them miss cannon minions in low diamond, so I sure know they're missing cannon minions down in silver and gold. Okay, so I think that's about it. They did change the dragon up a little bit, as far as what I get asked about a lot. I just figured I would hit that really quick. Dragons are still really important. They did nerf the dragons a little bit on this patch, particularly the dragon souls, but they're still really dominant. They're still extremely powerful, and you want to go for them. There's still going to be more value, more money than anything else. Infernal, I did the math on this one. This one's actually getting a little more questionable, like the first Infernal for 4% in the early game. If someone gets a kill in like 2 plates top, it might be more valuable than Infernal. But in general, with most of these dragons, they're going to be stronger than most other things you can be doing in the early game. And camping bottom is just a winning strategy anyways for several reasons. If you're the jungler, you still get multiple kills. You still have a better chance of getting plates. They did nerf plates a couple of patches ago, and now they've nerfed dragons, so they are kind of slowing down the snowballing a little bit. but it's still the best thing to be doing is camping bot lane 24/7 because you get multiple kills, plates, dragons, scuttles, and a lot of ADCs are one of the weakest classes in the game when they're behind in gold. So if you can just shut them down, but they're one of the strongest when they're ahead in gold. So if you shut them down, it's usually a pretty good proposition. Anyway, so dragons got nerfed, but they're still worth prioritizing. Then an Energizer build, look who was calling for this. You remember who told you this very first patch of the preseason? The Energizer builds are strong. And then I said Janna, Senna, and Kate. I said those would be some of the top ADCs right now. And I explained it for all of these reasons. And that is true. That's what everyone's going now. They are going for typically Storm Razor, Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire Cannon. And, if I do say so myself, I did call that. And people are just now figuring out. I even talked about the double crit cloak. I said, it might even be possible with the crit cloak changes, just whenever you complete one or two of those items, just to stack a couple of crit cloaks in there, because they're so cheap. So people are even starting to do that a little bit now, too. Okay, let's get into the actual supports here. I just wanted to really quickly, once again, go over some of the meta things, especially stuff that I get asked about a lot. Okay, I think Soraka is still going to be number one. It's very, very difficult to beat this champion if it's a good Soraka on the enemy team, and it's really hard for you to lose. Like, if the game is remotely close, like in the mid-game, you're probably going to win, especially if you do this setup that I advocate for here. That's a little bit different from some of the other people out there. In fact, most other people out there. But I really like taking Guardian, Font of Life, Conditioning, Revitalize, and then Ghost Poro and Ulti Hunter. And I'm going to tell you why on a few of these things. Number one, Aerie is pretty good poke in the early game, right? So that's nice with Aerie. However, if your AD carry is not putting up a lot of poke, then the rune is not nearly as good as Guardian is. So if you do have a really good Caitlyn or a really good Senna on your team, then yes, the Aerie can be good. But I think that's kind of a gamble. Because a lot of times, even if people are playing Caitlyn in most elo brackets and Senna, they just aren't landing enough harass. They aren't playing aggressively enough to force the enemy to take a bad back. And if you aren't doing that, if you aren't getting a kill or forcing bad backs or whatever, then I think the early game pressure runes just aren't going to be worth it. So like at challenger level and things like that, where a lot of people copy their builds, yes, they're going to be going for Aerie, Scorch, all of the early game harassment runes. But in most elo brackets where people aren't going to be, they're going to be focusing on CS much more than harassing, I just don't think it's as good. So also, you got to think about it this way. Like, you have to get Revitalized, because that's just OP on Soraka, right? And then, typically the next best secondary tree is going to be the Conditioning row. A lot of people go Bone Plating, but I think Bone Plating can get poked off, and it has a long cooldown pretty easily. Once you get to level 10, Conditioning is just way stronger. It's about 500 to 600 gold value, even if you don't get any other tank items, just the flat armor and magic resist on it, and that scales really well with your shields, with Guardian and Barrier benefit from those resistances as well. So, versus Bone Plating doesn't care about resistances, it doesn't care about your shield, it's just a flat amount that ends up getting blocked, I'm pretty sure. So, Bone Plating is a lot better in the early game. If you get hooked at level 1 or level 2, Bone Plating will help you out if it hasn't been poked off already. But Conditioning is going to be way better kind of in the mid-game. And so then what it really comes down to, you kind of have to have these Revitalize and then either Bone Plating or Conditioning. And then it comes down to, do you want these four things, Guardian, Font of Life, Ghost Poro, and Ulti Hunter, or do you want the Sorcery Tree? So I think these three are way better, or these four rather, are way better than the Sorcery Tree. First of all, you don't need Mana Flow Ban of Soraka. Your abilities are very cheap to begin with, and you're just going to be getting a ton of Fairy Charms, and you have really high base regen. So regardless of whether you're rushing Mikhail's, Redemption, Ardent Censor, Shirelia's, all of those are going to have Fairy Charms in them. So you can't get away from it. You're always going to have a million Fairy Charms. So the mana off of Mana Flow Ban is not that big of a deal. And then Absolute Focus is what most people would take. It's a small amount of AP in the early game, and if you're below 70 health, it doesn't give you anything. So, and Soraka has to damage herself to heal. You do heal yourself with Qs, but it's not a very good value proposition. It's okay. And then Scorch is the final one that you would get there. It does put in some decent harassment early on, but once again, if you're not harassing enough to make people take a bad back, so if you're not making them back before they get their BF sword, which means you're going to have like 3 minutes to force them to back, it's not going to be worth it. Because if they back, you know, even if they're at 100 health and they back and they still get their BF sword, they were going to back anyways. So all of that harassment that you did doesn't mean anything because you didn't disrupt their timing at all, right? You're not forcing them to miss additional CS they wouldn't miss anyways a lot of times. So it can be okay. Or you can take Guardian, which Guardian gives you extra. It protects you. It gives you the shield. It gives you the movement speed. Aerie never protects you ever. And so this makes you a lot harder to kill with Guardian. And it protects your AD carry or whomever from burst damage a lot more. So if that Leona or the Nautilus gets on them, you know, having that Guardian pop is going to give them a bigger shield, and it's going to give them that movement speed to help stabilize and get them out of that situation. Whereas Aerie is nice. It'll give them a small shield, but realistically, with how much burst damage there is in CC chains right now in the game, you're only going to get, in those types of situations, you're only going to get like one Aerie off before the person's either dead or not, right? Aerie is really only worth it in the mid to late game if you get 3 or 4 shields off in a team fight. During the cooldown of Guardian, if you're getting like 4 really useful shields off, it's great. However, if you land an auto attack, it'll send Aerie offensively. So you have to micromanage Aerie. You have to watch it, and as soon as it's going to come back to you, you have to use a heal and make sure you're getting a good shield out of it. Rather than getting the offensive part of it. Because if you're just doing a little bit of extra, like 10 extra damage at 25 minutes of the game off your auto, it's not going to matter. It's that, you know, 70 or 80 shield that would matter off of Aerie. So I just think it's a lot harder to use correctly. I think Guardian is just much more reliable. It protects you. It protects the AD carry. It does, you know, much higher burst shielding. Because in long fights, you're going to win anyways. Like the way, and that's kind of the theme of this whole like setup here is, in a long fight, you win anyways. What you want to do is protect yourself so you don't get bursted and that someone else on your team doesn't get bursted. So Guardian helps you out with that. I like that a lot. Font of Life is kind of a wash. It's not that great. You could take Demolish as well. It's okay. I think it's kind of like Absolute Focus. I would say it's the equivalent. It's like, it's all right. But it's just, or like Mana Flow Ban. It's like, it's okay, but not really necessary with Soraka. However, excuse me, getting to Ghost Poro and Ulti Hunter gives you a really, really powerful mid game. Ghost Poro, and people don't understand this, so I'll mention this really quickly. Ghost Poro, yes, the rune part of it is stupid. Like, it's not that great. It doesn't give you a lot of vision. I wish it gave you, like, full-on ward vision, but it does not. However, it does help you keep track of choke points, and it can help you watch dragons, which is really important against a lot of junglers in the early game, because a lot of champs can solo dragon. So, you know, being able to put a Ghost Poro on that dragon before you can get your ward item around like 8 to 10 minutes with Relic Shield is going to be really nice. And just having that little bit of extra vision does help out. But the main attraction here is if you're using this properly and if you're getting your wards quickly off of something like Relic Shield, then you can get this fully stacked by, you know, 15 to 20 minutes. And that's 30 extra ability power. Because remember, every time the Ghost Poro pops, then it's 2 stacks, and if it spots somebody, it's 2 more stacks. So if you're using this a lot and it's spotting people, you know, you probably should only need to put down like maybe 7 or 8 wards in order to get this correct. And you can kind of do the math on how long that'll take, right? You get maybe, I don't know, 4 of your trinket wards out, and then you get your first round of, then you can, as soon as you transform your ward item, you get 1 more, that's 5, then you get your first round of wards refilled from the fountain, you come back, and that's going to be 8. So it's usually about, like, maybe 1 additional back after you complete your ward item, a lot of times, if you're using it correctly. Now, if they keep sweeping all of your wards, if you keep feeding your wards into control wards or something like that, you just keep trying to ward that tri-bush, even though you know it's pinked, then yeah, it's going to take a bit longer. But in most scenarios, you're going to get this fully stacked. And 30 ability power is worth over 600 gold. So that's really, really powerful rune. So I highly recommend getting that. Just by comparison, like when magical footwear was really OP, and people still get it. It's about 310 gold value that you get at about 12 minutes now. I mean, if you get kills and assists, maybe you get it down to 11. Versus this proposition is giving you like basically double gold for an extra 5 minutes, right? So 50% more time to trigger it, but you get 100% more gold out of it. So it's really, really powerful, and a lot of people don't don't understand it very well. And then Ulti Hunter. This is really, really underestimated. Soraka has one of the most powerful ults in the whole game. It's global. It's basically instant. It can't miss. It's just insanely powerful on Soraka. And so having the cooldown on that is tremendous because you can use it almost on cooldown. It's not reactive like Janna's ult. You know, if there's a fight breaking out anywhere and you can turn the fight with your ult, just go ahead and turn it with your ult. Also, because it is global, this stacks up really quickly with Ulti Hunter. You don't have to wait until that split pusher finally shows up to a team fight on the enemy team in order to get your full stacks of Ulti Hunter. You can just get that 25% pretty quickly in the game. So that's extremely powerful as well, especially when you start combining Ulti Hunter with Windrakes, with just your normal CDR that you get. It's very good. So the fact that you can get 600 gold value off of Ghost Poro here and, you know, hundreds of gold value off of Ulti Hunter as well makes it a very, very good value proposition. So those are the two that I really like. So it's not just that Guardian is always, forever and always, like, straight up better than Aerie. I think in many situations it probably is. But it's also that the supporting cast is way better than what you get out of the sorcery tree. Guardian, Font of Life, Ghost Poro, and Ulti Hunter, I think, are far, far better than Mana Flow Band, Absolute Focus, and Scorch, especially in the mid-game. Once you get out of, like, the first 5 minutes of the game, I think it's going to be way stronger. Then I recommend Ionian Boots, Relic Shield. I like Mikhail's a lot. The flat plus 20% healing and shielding is massive on Soraka. Also, getting that cleanse is very good against stuff that's good against Soraka, like anything that has a lot of CC. So I really like that item. And the 20% plus healing and shielding that you get scales super well with Redemption. Because remember, you get 3 times the value of plus healing and shielding on Redemption. So it makes your Redemptions hit like a truck once you get that. So that's going to give you double global influence pretty much. Like you can drop a Redemption and you can drop your ult. Redemption reaches like half of the map. So it gives you a lot of reach. You know, that gives you a lot of power, macro power, right? So, like, if you're trying to ward or something and your clown team, like, engages on this 4v5 in the mid lane, you can at least drop a Redemption and ult, and you might still be able to win the fight anyways, even if you're not there. You know, you got picked off and died while you were warding, unfortunately, by an assassin, and then, you know, 30 seconds later, your team decides to engage on a fight. You still have your ult up. You know, you can still ult and maybe throw a Redemption from the base to influence fights in places. So having that kind of reach is really, really nice. So I like those. Ardent Sensor is a good third one if you really want to buff up like an 80 carry, or if you have like a Master Yi or some other auto attack or a Kindred on your team that's really strong, you can go for that. It has no defensive properties whatsoever, so it's the riskiest of the items. Mikhail's has magic resist. Redemption gives you some health. So that is on the risky side. Shirelia's is another one that's becoming a little popular as a third item instead of Ardent Sensor. It gives you more movement, gives you a decent amount of flat health with 300, and gives some of your meatball champions like your Olafs, your Dr. Mundos, all that stuff, a little bit of an easier time like running into the enemy team. Now, if you are going to take 3 active items, if you're going to take Mikhail's, Redemption, and Shirelia's in a game, I've tried this. You can try to go for Ingenious Hunter. This can be very, very strong. So it can give you up to a 40% CDR on Shirelia's, Redemption, and Mikhail's, which is very, very good. The problem is your ult is so strong, like at all points in the game, that I think your ultimate's just better than having those active reductions. I think just having the 25% of your ult's better. However, you can toy around with it, see what you think. It is really nice. This does improve your sweeper cooldown too, so you can sweep more wards later in the game. So if you're doing 3 actives, it'd be a decent choice. Man, it would be just a miracle if they just moved Ingenious Hunter, just renamed it and put it up here, or just like over here instead of Zombie Ward or something, or instead of Eyeball Collection. Just allows you to get Ulti Hunter and Ingenious Hunter. Man, that would be awesome. But unfortunately, Ingenious Hunter usually gets overshined by Ulti Hunter in a lot of these builds. But Yeah, Soraka is going to be super strong right now. So let's talk about Zyra. So I did move Zyra up a little bit. She's been in my tier 1 list for a while. But, you know, I tried her out last stream. And I've played Soraka a lot in the past. And, you know, as I kind of feared, the mana regen definitely does hurt her kind of in the early to mid game. Because you don't have that Frostfang regen. You don't get any regen items on her. She does have pretty high base mana regen at 13. So it's a lot higher than most other champs. Now, how you get around this is basically you only cast spells if you have a plant in the laning phase. Usually use your Q plus your W to harass. I still wouldn't get... You can maybe get 2 points in Q if you want in the early game. I still think that maxing Grasping Roots is the place to be. But if you are landing a lot of high-quality harassment on the enemy team during the laning phase, you're really poking them out. They don't have a lot of sustain. You know, maybe you could get 2 or 3 points in Deadly Spines in the early game. But yeah, I mean, she's great. She has awesome poke, great wave clear, takes dragons quickly, takes barons quickly, does a ton of damage, AP damage. So if you have an AD-heavy team, that's really useful. So she just has a lot of pressure in the early game, which is pretty nice. And she has good vision control later on with Rampant Growth because you can set this at 850 range away instead of, I think, normal wards are like 550 range. So being able to scout stuff out and using your plants as well are not shut out by control wards. So even if you spawn a plant in a bush that has a control ward, you'll still get full vision of the area the entire time, which is something that a lot of people don't appreciate unless you played Zyra a lot. So that's really, really good for controlling ward fights, trying to get that control ward out of that pesky tri-bush, for example, and the plant protects you as well. Obviously, it's going to shoot anything that comes close. So, it's pretty strong. And this is a great team fight ult, too. Like, Zyra really likes metas where everyone's trying to group up and fight around an objective, like a Baron or a Dragon, and that's happening a ton right now in this meta. So, she really, really likes team fights a lot because she just does so much base damage off of her plants, and then her ult has just like a huge radius and a big knock-up. So that's good. She can also incidentally take scuttles really quickly, which is nice, you know, kind of in its own way, especially even in low diamond. A lot of times people don't prioritize the scuttle as much as they should. You know, your jungler leaves that thing sitting there for a while. You get priority in your lane. You can just ping back, go up, ward dragon. While you're at it, you might as well just go ahead and grab the scuttle too. And she can wave clear pretty well as well. So if you get stuck in a lane, you know, everyone else rotated topside, but you didn't have time to get over there and you're trying to hold a wave, you can actually push pretty quickly as Zyra as well, which situationally can be pretty good. So I think she's going to be pretty strong right now. I would go with Comet, Mana Flow Band, Absolute Focus, Scorch, and then Taste of Blood, Ulti Hunter. You could also do Ghost Poro here if you're not in a poke-heavy lane. Now, she does need the mana, so you do need Mana Flow Band with her. And then you can proc Absolute Focus and Scorch, or Scorch rather, really easily off of your plants in the early game. So that poke does add up quite a bit. And every plant auto attack lowers the cooldown on Comet as well. So that's why people often take Comet on her. In the past, people have taken Dark Harvest, but that's been nerfed so much that I just don't think that's optimal anymore most of the time. So yeah, she can be a powerhouse early on, great at harassing. Even pretty good against things like Leona and Nautilus to an extent. As long as you don't get hooked by them, you can poke them low, and if they ever go on your AD carry, you just might be able to kill them with the nerfs to Aftershock. You can put a lot of damage on them. So I think she's pretty strong. Now, I do have Frostfang on here. I did try out Relic Shield last night, which I thought was fine. For the same reasons I just described before. You are giving up a lot of AP. Now, she does scale pretty well with AP. Those plants do quite a lot of damage in the early game. But, you know, just having those guaranteed wards by 8 to 10 minutes and guaranteed tier 3 transformation by, you know, 18 to 20 minutes is really nice. So, I would probably still take Relic right now. That's a bit extreme. She's one of the best Frostfang users out there because she can poke in the mid game with her plants to get the Frostfang stacks, but I don't know. In a lot of elos, I'd probably still take Relic Shield. And then she's very situational, not only as far as her itemization, not only in terms of like the different kinds of items you can get to different situations, But a lot of it is just like you have to play around how much gold you have on your backs, because she has very expensive items, and so this can get a little weird sometimes. So you have to kind of call an audible occasionally. So a very common scenario here is you don't have enough for blasting one on a back, and you have to choose: are you going to go back out there with 600 gold, or are you just going to get an amp tome? So like maybe you you know, completed your boots, you completed your Oblivion Orb, and now you're thinking, okay, I need to complete Morellonomicon because they have a Soraka, but we're just about to fight for this second dragon, and I know it's really important, and I know they're going to fight us for it. So you got that 600 gold. It's like, do you just not buy any power on your back and just wait on the blasting wand, or do you go ahead and get that amp tome so that you have more power for that really important dragon fight that's coming up? A lot of times you just got to buy the amp tome, you know, and then that's going to throw your whole build off, because you're going to say, all right, well, now let me, because then the next time you come back in, you might say, well, now you know, I'm at 600 gold again, still don't have enough for blasting wand, so I guess I'm going to have to get a ruby crystal and just build a haunting guise instead. Or maybe you come back in, you're super rich one time, and you wanted to build Oblivion Orb, but, you know, you don't have enough for that, but you do have a blasting wand. It's like, okay, are you going to get, you know, your amp tome plus your ruby crystal, or are you going to go ahead and get that pesky blasting wand because you know it's a real pain in the butt to save up 850 gold if you just got to kill it and assist off of a team fight. So it can get kind of weird, and you have to be flexible and just build whatever you have money to build. A lot of times if you can get a blasting wand, unless you're absolutely completing a key item like an Oblivion Orb or your boots or something, you need to try to get a blasting wand, because those things are really frustrating to get. And then, you know, sometimes you might have a blasting wand and then you have an amp tome, and you're not going to have enough to get your haunting guys or your Oblivion Orb or whatever, and then you might just skip it and just go straight for either a Rylai's or a Void Staff or something like that, just because of how much gold you have. So you really just have to play her a lot and get a sense of, like, not only what do you need in the game, but what's, like, the best stuff to buy given your limited funds. Because it's very rare that you're just going to roll up and get everything you want to buy right on time every time, because her items are very expensive. You know, a lot of her core items are going to be like 3,000 gold, which sucks. Unlike, you know, someone like Soraka, where basically everything that you're buying is going to be, you know, fairy charms and amp tomes, or like other little 400 gold items. You know, she doesn't have to buy anything that's really expensive, right? Like, you know, the most expensive thing you're going to get is combine 2 fairy charms into like a forbidden idol or something most of the time, right? So you're not waiting on that 850 gold item. So your itemization is much, much more smooth with the enchanters, because you can buy cheaper components and not have to throw off your build. Zyra is kind of a different beast, though, so you kind of got to get used to what you should be buying with her. And it's very situational. So not just the situation itself, like what's good, like I said, but what your back timings look like. Okay. I think Rakan is still really good, still very versatile. I think he's still the best engage. He has really good shields, which a lot of people forget about. He has that 1.6 ratio on his E, so he scales really well with plus healing and shielding and AP. Still has one of the best engages in the game with quickness plus W. Still has really good itemization. Now, I kind of like the same build, or a very similar build that I run on Soraka. With Guardian is pretty standard. Most people get the Guardian. Once again, I like conditioning over bone plating, just because it's just going to be guaranteed more value at 10 minutes. And then if you're going for plus healing and shielding stuff, Revitalize is pretty good. You can switch this out for the Tenacity rune as well. I'm blanking out on the name right now, but you can go for the Tenacity rune as well. And then I like Ghost Portal Ulti Hunter. You did lose Presence of Mind, which was my favorite build on him. The Presence of Mind plus the other Tenacity rune was pretty nice. But Ulti Hunter's pretty close. Like, honestly, once you get that fully stacked up in a fight where you get 2 kills or assists instead of 3, then it's actually better. But a lot of times, Presence of Mind, you know, you would be getting 3, and you didn't have to stack Presence of Mind, so it worked, like, you know, right away on your first couple of kills. So Presence was better, probably. But Ulti's still pretty good. And Ghost Poro is really good because he has great AP ratios. People forget that about Rakan, but especially on his shield, you know, you can do this twice. That's a 1.6 ratio on that shield. And even the heal has a 0.7. Your passive has a 0.9. So you've got a lot of pretty nice stuff there. So I think Ghost Poro is worth it. I'm trying to think of what else anyone would get here. I mean, I guess you could... They changed Nimbus Cloak now to where it's bad, I think. So I don't even think people would go Nimbus Cloak. I'm not really sure, but this is what I would be going most of the time on Rakan. Now, I like the Ionian boots just because the CDR is so important on him, and he uses his summoners so well. You know, like Ignite and Flash with his ult is, you know, so strong. So I really, really like Ionians on him. And he needs to be able to move around while he's in combat at a decent speed. So, like, not having the Mobies does suck because, you know, obviously you can't roam around and get those really fast engage plays. But I think having the 10% CDR plus the CDR on your summoners is better. But it's up to you. People probably disagree about that. You can still go for a defensive boot if you want. But the fact that the gold items don't have CDR on them anymore makes me want to get CDR on the boots. And then he's just extremely flexible. Most people start with either Zeke's or Athene's. Athene's is if you're really far ahead and you want to pressure them, you get that extra AP early on. Gives you some better, just a lot more damage, bigger shields, more healing. So Athene's can be really good. Or Zeke's if you need that armor, a little bit more protection. After that, typically it's either something like Knight's Vow or Redemption. You can go for a Shirelia's if you want to. That's a little bit less appealing because it doesn't have the AP on it anymore. You know, he does have nice plus healing and shielding. I really wish that Shirelia's was like a 60-second cooldown, but it's okay. And I have been trying out Righteous Glory on him a little bit, especially if they don't have a major AP threat. To go something like Zeke's and then Righteous is pretty good. But yeah, Righteous is basically like a tankier version of Redemption, although it is more expensive. So just kind of up to you. But he does have a lot of different builds you can get. If your 80 carry is really far ahead, if they're like 3-0, you can also get Ardent Sensor really early on. You go like an Athene's Ardent Sensor, and that'd give you a lot of extra AP. But anyway, still going to be the best engage in the game. One of the best things about him is not only does he engage well, but he peels really well with his ult, and he has that shield. So you can actually protect your 80 carry and other people from like a Zed or some other major assassin, a Rengar, a Kha'Zix, that type of stuff. Versus, you know, other engaged champions like Leona and Nautilus, they have no way to protect, like to shield a target, right? All they can do is CC and sort of hope for the best. But you can CC and shield. And that's what I think makes Rakan very unique and very strong. Anyone that doesn't have him in the top 2 or top 10, tier 1 or tier 2 of their tier list, pretty much any meta is trolling. Like, he's just such a well-rounded champion with a great kit. He's pretty much always going to be relevant. He's the best one-trick out there. Okay, Senna, I still think is pretty good. She might deserve to go below Nautilus, but she just has a really strong laning phase. She did lose a lot off of those nerfs a couple of patches ago, a lot more than I thought she was going to lose. But I can tell you firsthand experience, at least in high platinum, low diamond, she's going to be pretty strong because she has the nice poke. Her W still roots for a pretty strong duration. Her itemization, if you do go for the AD items, is expensive, kind of like Zyra, so that does suck. But her laning phase is just so oppressive. If you put her with like a Caitlyn or a Jhin or maybe a Misfortune, just any other early game pressure like long range champ, she's going to be extremely good. And then she's got her semi-global with her ult, so kind of like a Soraka. You can miss with that. And the heal and shield is not nearly as big. But she just has just pretty much that non-stop harassment. And if you ever land that W and your AD carry has some sort of chain CC, they're probably dead. Right? So if Caitlyn puts a trap on you after you get W'd, or if Jhin hits you with his W, you're probably going to get blown up. So just the fact that she has the range, really strong harassment, still pretty good poke with her Q, just makes her a menace in the laning phase. Now, I think in the mid game she is a lot weaker than she was. Like, her scaling's not as good. The W is still pretty good, but you know, her utility with her E being able to speed people up and make it difficult to decide like who's who you should engage on, like what's even going on when she has that cloud, does still make her like really, really good in the mid game. So I still think that she's quite strong. I would go for the 80 build. I've tried like the Athene's type of build, and it's okay. It's friendlier with the itemization in terms of costs, but it's just a lot less damage in the early game. So I would probably go for the Umbral Trespass, and then either Ghostblade or Dustblade after that. Or not Umbral Trespass. Whatever that thing is that that spots the wards. The new lethality item. She can also buy Executioners, which is huge. The fact that she can get the Executioners and the support doesn't have to get it against things like a Soraka or a Mundo or a Zac or whatever is very, very handy. She's one of the only 80 carries that can do that and can apply it consistently to a lot of different people. So I still think she's going to be pretty good. And then Nautilus is going to be the best like engage pure tank out there. They did nerf him a little bit. I don't remember exactly what they nerfed on him directly. Or was it just indirect nerfs? I think they nerfed him directly somewhere, but honestly I can't remember what it is. Let me see the patch history here. He's still going to be really good. Okay, they nerfed the... Okay, yes. 50 damage off the depth charge. That is actually pretty significant. But he still has a ton of CC. You know, just a point-click ult that can hit multiple people. 120-second cooldown is a very, very short cooldown. The Riptide effect does a pretty good amount of AoE damage. I mean, realistically, like... And you saw this kind of in... at Worlds a little bit, not a ton, but he does have nice AP ratios. Like you can like run AP on him and not be completely troll. So a good example of this would be like an Ardent Sensor on him early on would give you extra damage, and then if you take Font of Life, the Riptide effect does apply Font to everybody, which would in turn you know, allow everyone to get the Ardent Sensor buff. So I'm not saying it's always there, but there might be some combinations where you could potentially sneak some AP in there. However, most of the time, he's still going to be probably just like a Zeke's user. You know, like Zeke's Knight's Vow or Zeke's Righteous Glory or something like that. But he does have a little bit of AP option in there if they don't have a lot of damage and you're really far ahead. You could maybe think about that, although it's probably still a little troll most of the time. I mean, you might be able to mix it up and go for something like... Gargoyle Stone Plate. I haven't really messed around with that item too much, but I'm thinking, like, if you go Gargoyle, you might be able to get away with going something like Ardent Sensor, because you're going to get so much protection once you activate the Gargoyle. So, I don't know. He's interesting. Just the fact that he has such a massive amount of CC, that guaranteed knock-up for the ult, really good AoE damage with Riptide. He's still going to be a really strong champ. So I'll just take Aftershock, Demolish, Bone Plating, Unflinching. Oh, I didn't change this around. They did change Presence of Mind. I'm honestly not sure what you would take second. I mean, maybe it is just Ghost Poro, Ulti Hunter. I would have to think about that. But, I mean, like I said, he does get value out of the AP. So maybe it is just Ghost Poro. You could also take something like Cheap Shot if you wanted a little bit of extra damage, especially in the early game. And then just Mobility Boots, Relic Shield, Zeke's Knight's Vow, or Ardent Sensor. So I think he's still going to be a really high-value tank if you want one of the hard engage tanks. He can still be pretty strong. Make sure you're banning out Morgana if you do that, though. So he is kind of an answer in the early game to Soraka if you land that hard engage. Later on, she's probably going to be able to outscale you, but, you know, he can do all right in the early game. Okay, and the last few we'll kind of go through a little more quickly here just because, you know, I want to try to get through all of them before we get to an hour here. So, Janna, I had in Tier 1, but I've played her a few times, and sometimes it just feels really bad. Like, her early game, that shield early, like, the 18 seconds on the shield is brutal. Now, you can go for, like, W-Max early with Comet build, and you just, you know, you'll go Comet, Scorch, Absolute Focus, Relentless Hunter, and either Cheap Shot or Taste of Blood. So you get, like, really good if you can just go up and constantly spam W. Like, you can get some really nice harassment down with Comet, especially early on. But the problem is, once again, like I said earlier in the video, if your AD carry is not helping you to harass, you're probably not going to do enough damage for it to matter. And it can be very dangerous. If you take damage back, you can't heal in the laning phase as Janna. So Taste of Blood does help you out a little bit with that. But, you know, it's just a problem. If the AD carry is just sitting there, like, watching you, and you try to walk up and harass the Caitlyn, right? And we won't even pretend if you have a Soraka on their team, it's really, really bad. But, like, even if it's just Caitlyn, you go up and harass Caitlyn, right? You walk up and press W on her, and then she, like, auto-attacks you and then cues you to the face whenever you do that. It's like, yeah, you both took damage, but, you know, she's probably going to heal hers back with fleet footwork on the wave, right? Or Jen, you know, Jen just auto-attacks you, and you come in, and then he hits you with your W and grenades you, and then just hits you again, and it's like, okay, well, there's, like, over half your health, just so you could land one W in. So, I don't know. I just don't like the all-in, like, just poke champs early, other than, like, Zyra, because Zyra will actually kill you if she gets you low with her E. I don't know. She's okay. So she does have the early harass like that, especially against melee champions if you think you're not going to get poked back that much. And she can transition to scale really well later on in the game. But, like, I don't know. The shield has a long cooldown later on. You can lower it by, you know, landing your Ws and your Qs. But it's just kind of conditional. Your ult is really nice. People have to stand in it, though, and you have to be in the right position for it. So, I still think that she's really good. She might deserve to be tier 1 over maybe Senna or something like that. But I just most of the time when I'm playing Janna, I'm just thinking, why am I not playing Soraka? Like, Janna does peel pretty well, you know, with her Tornado, with her ult. But with Soraka, a lot of times you can get out of stuff. You know, you can heal through a lot of things, especially if you have proper positioning with Soraka. So, I don't know. Janna is good. I mean, she's obviously good. She's got a really high win rate. You know, I still have an okay win rate on her. I think I'm still like 53, 55% or something on her. So she's all right. You just have to be careful. If you're against Soraka, it's going to be a nightmare. And I really don't even like the matchups against like Leona that much. But I don't know. She's okay. If you want the guaranteed harassment, and you know you can trust your AD carry to put down some pressure with you if you have a Caitlyn and it's like an ADC main, and you know they're going to do all right. If you check them out on Professor, they're going to be strong. Then Janna can be good. Because they can dodge like Soraka Qs, you know. You don't max Equinox anymore, so you don't have that guaranteed like harassment like you used to back in the day. Probably about a year and a half ago. So it just depends. But she's still going to be pretty good. She roams. She still scales pretty well. Just not quite as well as someone like a Soraka does. Okay, Blitzcrank is actually really strong right now. And the main thing is there just aren't as many tanks. And he's just very good against a lot of these other squishy champions. Like Soraka, if you can get around Zyra's plants, he can one-shot Zyra. Senna, Janna, you know, all of these champions... He just has so much burst, and he pulls people so far out of position. It's just really hard to heal through all of that. So, that's really his thing. Over Nautilus and Leona, it's just his raw damage is just unmatched for a support. His burst. And the fact that he pulls people so far out of position, it's just very, very difficult to recover. So, yes, he doesn't do anything except for hook, basically. That's it. Whereas Nautilus has his point-click ult. He's got AoE damage in team fights. He's got wave clear. You know, Leona, low cooldown, hard engage ult, just tons and tons of CC. Blitzcrank's like, nope, I've got this one ability every 20 seconds or so. If I hit it, it's a one-shot. If I don't, I'm worthless. And that's just it. But it's just risky. You know, if he does it, if he gets the hook, you're dead. You know, so he's just he's a super high-risk, high-reward support. And if you're into that, I'm not most of the time, but if you're into it, he can definitely be very good, and he's really good against a lot of the popular champs right now. Now, Leona, And he didn't get hurt really by the aftershock like a lot of the other tanks did. I don't really think of him as a tank. Like, he's tank E. He's not really a tank. He's more like a mage or like a ranged assassin or something is a better way to think about it. Because like he when he pulls people, he's not looking to engage a team fight most of the time. He's looking to one-shot somebody. Versus like Nautilus and Leona, when they go in, like they're trying to start fights, you know. And there's gonna be like extended trades. Blitzcrank's like you grab somebody and it's, you know, one shot and they're dead most of the time. Okay, Leona, she has the shortest hard engage cooldown of all of the major engage supports. It's 90 seconds. The Blitzcrank's 120. So it's a really, really low cooldown. It has a huge engage range. It's like 1200 engage range, I think, off of her ult, especially if they're playing champs that can't flash. So they're playing like Soraka or something like that. Then she's going to be really, really strong because it's hard to dodge that without a flash. So yeah, 1200 engage range. Super short cooldown. She does a ton of damage. She can engage through the minion wave, unlike Nautilus, which is really nice. You know, you press your E, you're just always a threat if you're standing up near the front. And this is probably the most favored of like the anyone that's like smurfing and wanting to play support as a smurf or whatever. She's going to be one of the most popular ones, probably she and Zyra. But yeah, just ton of CC. The fact that Aftershock got nerfed especially hurts Leona because her Eclipse would stack the extra bonus armor and magic resist you got off of Aftershock stacked multiplicatively with her Eclipse. So she loses a lot of early game survivability off of that. But she still is pretty strong in the early game. And then once she gets that mid game, she can just run around and just keep engaging and, you know, killing people a lot with Solar Flare. Now she has... she doesn't have, like, insanely good AP ratios. She does have on her ult. She has one there, but Nautilus is still going to be a little bit better, so you definitely would not want to go Ardent Sense or anything on her. You don't want to do it on Nautilus most of the time, if we're being honest, but so her itemization is going to be a bit more limited. You don't have those fringe cases where you can do something a little spicy. It's typically going to be like either Zeke's or Righteous Glory and Knight's Vow, some combination of those most of the time, so still going to be one of the better hard engaged champs. Bard's kind of just a weird in general. He can be really good if you're really good on him. He has a great win rate right now. He does have a pretty low cooldown engage ult as well. I think it's like 110 seconds. So he can make the plays. He can pressure early. My biggest problem with Bard when I try to play him is his short attack range, and he really is attack damage reliant, or just like attack reliant. So yeah, he only, I think it's like 525 range, but yeah, it's 500 flat range actually. So really, really short range, and it's difficult to go up and auto attack like a Caitlyn or a Senna, you know, when they have like a billion range. So that to me, when I played him, was the weirdest, like toughest thing. Is it's hard to get those auto attacks in against like the really popular long range champs. But if you're up against something like a Kaisa or a Lucian, you know, he could maybe throw down a little bit more harassment there. This is a weird format. What? Why does this format look so weird? Maybe they're slowly going through upgrading a lot of this stuff. Pathing. What is pathing radius? Okay. Auto. I don't know. Maybe they're going through, changing the wiki, adding in a bunch of extra stuff. They do have recommended items, I suppose. But anyways, he does scale, like, okay, you know, with his meats. He can do some pretty good auto attack damage in fights. He can get really, like, creative ganks with his magical journey if you're really synced up, like if you're doing with a jungler or something. That can be useful. Obviously, your ult has a really long engage range. If you hit somebody with that ult, and other, like, you have teammates around, that person's probably dead. So he just has a lot of weird stuff he can do. I mean, the ult can stop things like if they have a Zed ult or a Karthus ult, it can shut down towers, can shut down barons or dragons. There's just so many. It's like one of the most unique and interesting like ults in the game. And you just have to practice him a ton just to figure out what's optimal. Are you going to use this defensively? Are you going to use it offensively? You know, which situations are you looking for? If you're just trying him out, I would recommend just going just for the easiest to understand ult most of the time, which is just the engage ult. You just, someone's caught out, you tempered fade them, then you just go up, see if you can line up a stun on him with your Q, and take him down. But yeah, he's okay. I think, you know, like this says, a lot more people are sort of gravitating towards sort of this Twin Shadows build, because that slow is going to allow you to hit your ult a lot easier. People still take Electrocute on him, though. No one's going for, like, the slow Glacial Augment. Your auto attack's already slow once you get past a certain upgrade on the meeps. So, I don't know. I've thought about taking a GLP on him, too, for similar reasons, where you can just kind of land that slow and you get the, you get a little bit more utility. But a lot of people don't do GLP on him. You don't really need the mana, frankly. So, I don't know. I think a lot of people just end up doing, like, either Athene's Redemption, or they'll throw a Twin Shadows in there. But he's pretty strong. You got Electrocute, Cheap Shot, Ghost Pour, Relentless Hunter, and then Biscuit's Insight. You could try some different secondaries. I'm not sure what they would be, but either way, it seems like he's still pretty legit. Okay, and then Nami. Nami's still pretty good. I mean, she does have nice harassment. It's just her W, like, this day and age, this feels like it doesn't heal for enough. You know, it caps out at, like, 170. And so many of the other champions, most notably, like Soraka, their healing has been buffed so much that it just feels like it actually caps out at 160. It just feels super anemic. I think it used to be as high as, like, 240 or something. It was nerfed a lot back in the day. She still does have her bubble, which does good damage. The magic damage on her W is pretty good with its harassment. Tidecaller's Blessing, they were toying around with making this trigger off of spells as well, but they haven't buffed that yet. So we'll see if that comes in 10.1. But she's alright. I just think that, you know, most of the time I would just rather have a Soraka, but if you do want to try to go for more of a balanced early game aggression with a pretty good suite of CC, then maybe you could go with Nami. And then you just want to go for the Airy Scorch combo with Conditioning and Revitalize. And then the final couple of supports, and then we're done here. Lulu's okay. Her big problem is all of her stuff is single target, so her ult is single target, unlike Soraka, unlike Janna that can heal multiple targets. It doesn't scale very well with it doesn't scale at all with plus healing and shielding because it's an infusion of health, not a heal, and it has a really low AP ratio on it. Her Q is pretty much worthless outside the laning phase. They did buff her shield, which is okay. Her W, it's really strong, but you have to choose whether you want it to be a piece of CC or whether you want it to be a buff on one of your carries. If you could do both of those somehow, she would be awesome. Like, if they put the buff on the AD carry on her E, so if they put the attack speed steroid on her E, she'd be a lot better. But right now, the fact that you have to choose either Polymorph or Whimsy just means that she has flexibility, but she just doesn't have enough total power. She can still be really strong if you have a very good AD carry that scales really well with attack speed. And there's not a lot of those right now. But if you have someone on your team who's like a really good Kog'Maw or Twitch or something like that, it can be good. It's going to be a lot less good on people that are going with the Storm Razor Infinity Edge because they're not going to have a lot of attack speed. And that's going to be like a lot of the power AD carries right now, like your Caitlyn's, your Jins, stuff like that. Sona's okay. Soraka's just a way better version after the Sona nerfs last year and the Soraka buffs. Morgana is a good counter pick to things like Nautilus and Leona, but her cooldowns are just really long. Her W is kind of worthless outside the laning phase. She's kind of got Lulu-itis, where she's got like 2 good abilities, and the other 2 really aren't that great. Like her ult's not that great, and her W's not that great. But she's got a great Q. She's got a great E. So in the right circumstances, maybe you can pick her. Thresh can still be really good. You have to hit everything with him, and he gets outscaled hard. But you can make him work. And then Swain's kind of the spicy pick that I just threw in there. If you want to play something that has like some nice CC, but also does some decent AP damage. Good combination with some of the other AD carries that have nice CC out there. So Swain can be decent as well. But Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.